Hello everybody and welcome to this. It's the continuation in my series on Arthur Conan Doyle's The Sign of Four. Everything you see in these videos comes from the ebook, which you can get for £3.99 at mrbruff.com or amazon.co.uk, and the ebook contains the complete original novel and all of my analysis as well. So we're having a look at the character of Dr. Watson today. And Dr. Watson is really the counterbalance to Holmes's extremes. We looked at Sherlock Holmes in the previous video, so check that one out if you haven't already seen it. As the narrator also, we must remember that the reader sees the entire world of the novel, its characters and the social environment through Watson's eyes. When we meet Watson at the beginning of The Sign of Four, it's clear that he disapproves of Holmes's drug use, which immediately gives us the impression of a conscientious and well-meaning man. We learn that he used to be in the army, and as such is a man of rules and regulations who is very aware of his social class. And acknowledging that he has feelings towards Mary Morstan, he says, "What was I, an army surgeon with a weak leg and a weaker banking account, that I should dare to think of such things?" Now, Watson is the romantic, emotional, human counterpoint to Holmes. We saw how Holmes criticised an account Watson had written about a case he'd solved as being filled with romanticism, to which Watson cries, "But the romance was there." It's necessary that Watson is the feeling character, as Holmes is so unfeeling, and there's a revealing exchange between them when Watson attempts to test Holmes through examination of a watch. Now, Watson wishes to teach Holmes a lesson about the dogmatic approach he sometimes took, and we could take this to mean that he wanted to bruise Sherlock's ego a bit to show him he's not always right. The test is to examine a watch which Watson says he's just come into his possession, and he asks Holmes to give him his opinion upon the character or habits of the late owner. After examining the watch, Holmes deduces that it was a family heirloom handed down to Watson's brother, who was a drunkard and a man of untidy habits. Now, despite being entirely correct, Watson is upset, of course, by what Holmes discovers, and declares that it is unworthy of him, believing he investigated his brother, that there was no way he could have found the information from the watch alone. And here we have Watson's emotion, which surprisingly has an impact on Holmes, who, viewing the matter as an abstract problem, had forgotten how personal and painful a thing it might be to Watson. And this sums up their relationship entirely. Watson is the social conscience of the rambling, thoughtless Holmes, and as a pair, they work very well together. Holmes's nature is complemented by Watson's kindness and emotion. The fact that Watson expresses and communicates his emotions to the reader is also important. In description of London and scenes where the story takes place, it's Watson's romanticism which provides the engaging and readable backdrop for Holmes to show us how clever he is. And this is captured quite nicely when Watson's describing for us a journey across central London on their way to meet Mr. Sholto. Now, if you pay attention to the depth of Watson's description and how he conveys a sense of emotion in the words Conan Doyle gives him. It was a September evening, and not yet 7 o'clock, but the day had been a dreary one, and a dense, drizzly fog lay low upon the great city. Mud-coloured clouds dropped sadly over the muddy streets. Down the Strand the lamps were but misty splotches of diffused light, which threw a feeble circular glimmer upon the slimy pavement. You can read the rest, but you get the idea. In fact, Holmes's summation of the scene so eloquently and fastidiously described by Dr. Watson is that our quest does not appear to take us to very fashionable regions, and without Watson's romanticism and feeling, it would be very difficult for Holmes to hold any reader's attention with his cold, emotionless approach to society and people in general. Again, this is revealed at the very end in an exchange between himself and Watson. Throughout The Sign of Four, Watson's relationship with Miss Morstan grows. He certainly has feelings for her and sees her more than a factor in the case. By the end, despite his standing and wealth, they agree to marry. Watson tells Holmes that Miss Morstan has done me the honour to accept me as a husband in prospective. Holmes responds with a most dismal groan, which is as much emotion as he displays in the entire story, and tellingly replies, "I feared as much. I really cannot congratulate you." Holmes here still does not see any point in human relationships, and particularly relationships with women, who he sees as factors in a problem to be solved. Ironically, it's the odd yet fascinating relationship between Watson and Holmes that draws readers to Conan Doyle's stories as much as the detective himself, so relationships clearly are an essential part of the story. Without Watson, Sherlock Holmes would be a very difficult character to understand, let alone like. He proves to be the balance to Holmes's extreme personality, and it's through his articulate and often highly descriptive prose that we understand the world Sherlock Holmes inhabits. Simply put, without Watson, there is no Holmes. If you found this video useful, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.